Hello, I am Kawasaki and I work for the UIT team in Line Corporation. Thank you for attending my session today. This session is titled Why Line's front-end development team built the web tracking system. Often, in your daily work, in order to measure the effectiveness of new features or to utilize the data, we often perform web tracking. At Line, the web front-end development team builds this web tracking system in-house. Today, as Line, I'm going to explain how web tracking system is being utilized by Line Corporation. And here's the agenda for today's session. As I have mentioned earlier, the web tracking system is the main theme. But the development was started from the front-end team's issues. So I'm going to provide the background and what issues we were facing. And for the second half, I'm going to explain the web tracking system. First, regarding the web front-end development. So there's a couple questions I'd like to ask you. Among the attendees today, can you raise a hand if you're working on front-end? Okay, thank you. I see that there are not many of you who takes part in front-end development. That's why I thought I also belong to front-end development. But many engineers, when I came up with this topic, I was trying to come up with something that the front-end engineers and as well as many other engineers could appreciate, and which is why I am going to talk about this web tracking system. As shown here, Line provides a wide range of content and services from the web browser and web view. And in order for that, for example, for Line Live and Line Music, we have developed HTML5 media players, and we have also developed a viewer for manga. And in order to provide the contents from the external party, we have developed the SDKs. So we're approaching a wide range of domains. In addition, in the recent development, it is becoming much easier to develop both a server application and web client. In the past, where some developments are done on the server side, such as HTML rendering, now that can be done on the client side. So due to this, the budget for front-end development has grown larger. And due to this, new features has come out. Among some of you who just raised a hand, I believe that many of you are having problems with the development for both server side and the client side. At Line, there is a dedicated team for such development, and I also belong to such team. And this is not only for Japan, but we have development teams in various markets. The reason is that because we had difference in the communication speed, laws, and cultures. And especially the front end is something that is the closest to the users. So we often see different outputs depending on the countries. In such circumstances, some know-how needs to be shared, and we also need to work across the borders and share information. From here on, I'd like to talk about two services. First is the one is NewsTab, which was released earlier in February this year. If you're using Line, you may have noticed some changes in the design and addition in the content. But actually, we're releasing new features every week. And as a matter of fact, yesterday, while I was preparing for this presentation, we're still working on bug fixes. And News tab has been used by 59 million users per month as of March 2017. And in order to improve the cycle of the bug fixes, we have been working on this on the website. First, as a difference on the so I'd like to explain what is done in the native clients. In creating a web view, if you just simply use HTML, for example, if a user was using Line and it went offline, or in some cases, the user may be riding the subway and the networks get disconnected. In that case, the contents will not be displayed. In order to prevent that, Line client will initially request the HTML from the news server, and it will be cached within the client, which will then be loaded into WebView. Next, the Line client obtains a token which is used for the user authentication using Line API. So this is called a ready event. So through the dispatch event, this event will be fired, and within that, the authentication information will be included within web application. This process is executed with JavaScript SDK of less than 100 lines. Once the ready event is transferred to WebView, with that as a trigger, the contents will be inquired to news server and displayed onto the screen. This is a simple view of the diagram, but by using this token, the news server will access the channel server API and obtain the information. On the other hand, after the display is shown, there are some cases where events need to be fired from the user client. In that case, we'll use this method here. When there's a callback from Line event, just like ready event, you will go through dispatch event, but this is an asynchronous process. And in order to make sure everything is right, the asynchronous communication is done. Some of you may be easier to understand. May be easier if you see the actual code, and this is it. This custom event, which is fired by Line client, is fired directly to the Line native message. And this information, such as event objects, details, and event name, can be received. By doing so, the route for the event will be concentrated in one route. So the developer can now use a dummy API for development, and it will also make it easier to debug and also do the logging. On the other hand, if you're notifying the event from WebView to the native event, we use the post message function. This is the first line. So in any event, we'll use this function. So developer can just access this and perform debug or login. And depending on the versions, the release will be different. So this could be possible. The client and the server side will have a different version. So this will provide an easier framework to perform error handling. From this point forward, I'm going to talk about the web applications. We employ the general Flux architectures. I'm going to skip the details here, but by adding the storage concept of storage in the layer, we use the JSON data. We store the JSON edge in the local storage. So when loading for the first time, by using this DOM structure, the user does not have to wait for the application to refresh and view the information. And for this news tab, it's quite an active area. We get a lot of requests where so we're required to display over hundreds of contents. So in order to achieve this, we are using the virtual rendering. In order to realize this on web browser, we have developed collection view called the JS components. So this can handle, depending on which contents to be displayed, this will provide the news contents, huge volume news contents in a short time. Here, I have spoken about the development of the news tab and what we have done for the development in our daily tasks. Now, I'd like to switch over to, before I switch over to what was the main issue, I'd like to talk about another use cases. Apologies for that. Another use case is this coupon book. So this is a coupon which LINE receives, and when you tap on it, the web view will be launched. There, the user can see a list of coupons. Here, I'm going to talk about the actual bug fix we had to go through in our development. This is what is the screenshot that was on the BTS. You can see that it's all white, and you don't know, you probably cannot tell what's going on. So initially, using the GPS information, it uses the location data and display the relevant coupons. And when the user accesses this feature, this white screen will come up. You may be wondering why such simple bug has occurred. But as you can see, this only happens when this is accessed from Singapore. So obviously, we had to work on this right away. And this is the actual correction. And this might not be easy to see what's written in the code, but the actual correction is quite minimal. So as you can see, this bug fix is quite minimal. But if you imagine trying to come up with a fix, this can only be reproduced in the client side, and also this will only happen in Singapore. So this is a very difficult issue to reproduce. So I believe this is a case where the developer will have a hard time track down the issues. Apologies for that again. So, because I understand that this is an issue that's very hard to prevent. The reason is there's no way that we can test on all operating systems, all devices. This is not a realistic way of developing software. So, if this problem cannot be reproduced, how can we find out about this problem? We need to find a method to come up with a solution. So one of the solutions we came up with is to track the error on the browser. So we developed this tool, which is shown on the screen right here. So there is a framework which will gather all the errors. So here we received all the logs, and this is something that we came up with from scratch. One thing that we emphasized was the scalability. Line is used by a large number of users, and due to this, the scalability is quite important. In this tool, this is a very thin layer, but this is made it so that the server is stateless and the log will just accumulate. So this way, this can be scaled very easily.
As for the collected logs, this kind of dashboard is created on Kibana and monitored. With the example of the coupon book, the issue only occurred in Singapore. In such a case, the fact that it is only occurring in Singapore was clear from the inquiries, but it was very difficult to actually visit other markets to see if the issue wasn't occurring elsewhere. Therefore, from the dashboard, we calculated the errors for each country to immediately detect whether or not the same issue is occurring outside of Singapore. Sorry, I'd like to skip a few slides again. In this way, we were able to collect error logs and analyze them. But this was not enough for cases where there were, let's say, 10,000 errors occur, and the rate of the error reproduction. Without this information, we couldn't determine how much business impact an error has. Therefore, not just the error log, but we needed to collect other data as well. Needless to say, at Line, we have regular web view and tools that were being monitored with other tools. But through error log collection, we stored error logs as raw data and make it accessible flexibly. This was something that we felt was important. Therefore, I am a member of the web front-end development team, but there is also data processing and machine learning teams at Line. We work with such teams to handle and collect even bigger data. To show you the scope, here is an index. 1 billion per day. This was data collected on August 7th. This is the total number of all event logs. 1 billion events is only a partial traffic when you look at Line as a whole. But if you collect events to one platform, you can imagine how big this number is. I hope. There are 4 types of events we collect: page view, custom event, events for scroll tracking, and performance calculation or tracking event that we call page load. Here is the log format that we send. It can be broken down into application, device, user, session, and event. I'd like to focus on the definition of user. Here we mean not line users, but cookie users, because the line user information and code data on the web, if these are linked directly, the data collected through web tracking needs to be used for analysis. There is a great limitation. Log collection generally is, if it's done per service, it will be linked to user data, and the log will be difficult to handle. That is why we have designed this structure so that users are cookie-based. Here are some words about the event property. We have a type so that events can be added without having to consider backend, and so on. The scroll event is a feature that was added on afterwards, but the type name is scroll. The body has the magnitude of the scroll, how much the user scrolled. In other words, the depth. Another example is this. Performance event is a feature that was also added on afterwards. The event name is performance. Body contains the time spent to display the page using the navigation API. So based on this data, several indexes are calculated to make improvements. Similarly, this is a diagram showing the current web tracking system. There are minimal changes, but basically, with Elasticsearch, 3 terabytes of indexes are created per day. Therefore, we insert Kafka in between so that if Elasticsearch shuts down, we are not in trouble. Also, according to the traffic volume, the front server is being expanded. Currently, we have 20. We also had some team structure changes. Currently, the focus is to work on front end, and data is handled by a dedicated team. So, how much traffic is there? This is a day's worth of event logs in over a certain time. News type content is the peak. For a certain entertainment news, when it was broadcasted, there was up to 35,000 requests in a second. This much data is collected every day. So, how do we utilize this data that we collect? That is my next topic. Here are some main examples. The analysis screen called Line Analytics, and certain report screens on the official account CMS, and for machine learning. These are just some of the ways that data is used. But the web tracking system is at the core for all of these. There are 3 steps to utilize data: collection, accumulation, and utilization. But we are continuously collecting and accumulating, so we are constantly prepared to utilize data. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to internal services that we normally wouldn't disclose. First is Line Analytics, developed by Data Labs, and Mochigome, which is an error viewer. This is the screen showing line analytics. This is a standard web analytics screen, and planners can view data easily. Or it is region-based, device-based, and there are other indexes that can be applied to read the data in various ways. This not just contains data collected from the web, but also through native client. Line employees can also access the screen from their smartphones. Next, I'd like to talk about Mochigome, another service. On a daily basis, we are using Kibana for error event aggregation. But Kibana is a very useful tool, but unless you understand the specification of the log being handled, it was difficult to read the data in an effective way. Especially, error notification and minor adjustments were difficult to make. Therefore, we used Elasticsearch as a backend to develop this. To give you an example, if you look at the bottom right of the screenshot, the error event content is matched with the source map to look at where the error event applies to. Also, if the number of error events goes over a threshold, a notification is sent. As a side note, the development of this tool involved many of the members who attended the LINE internship this summer. Thank you for their efforts. So, up to here, I have talked about the LINE web tracking development background, structure, data. To conclude this session, I would like to talk about why we are continuing to develop the web tracking system at LINE. Front-end engineering, if you look at it simply from a technical perspective, it is simply to show data in a database or send data entered to the server. But we, who are developing where it is very close to the user, is handling issues that occur on the user's end and try to understand the issues accurately helps in many ways, such as we know what kind of data we have, what kind of events occur. We know this best. And this collected data can be used for analysis, but also used for machine learning and new services and improvements. These improvements can be collected in one place so that the improvement cycle can be connected across a company. The web tracking system is at the core of this improvement cycle. We, the web front-end engineers, may be developing at the farthest point from the core, but in another way, we are developing at a place which is the closest to the endpoint users. So, the purpose of this project is to directly send users' voices to the respective engineers. The LINE's web tracking system still has a lot of challenges. There are services that need improvement and so on. But as you know, the corporate mission of LINE is closing the distance. In order to achieve this, As one of the channels, we hope to strive to continue with web tracking and provide better service for our users. This concludes my session. I'm very sorry once again that the slides were mixed up. Thank you.